The city was alive with neon lights, but the streets felt cold and empty at that late hour. Expensive cars rushed by, splashing puddles across the sidewalk, while people hurried home, avoiding eye contact with those who lingered in the shadows. Ethan Cole, one of the city's most powerful CEOs, stepped out of his sleek black car after a grueling day at work. He adjusted his tailored suit, looking every bit the man of wealth and authority, but beneath his polished exterior, he carried the invisible weight of being a single father. His daughter was the only reason he hadn't drowned entirely in the world of ruthless deals and lonely nights. As he walked down a quieter block, intending to take a short path toward his penthouse, he heard it, a cry that wasn't just sound, but raw desperation. "Please, please don't take my baby." The words echoed through the empty street, making him stop in his tracks. At first, he thought he'd imagined it. But then he saw them. Under the dim street lamp, a young woman knelt on the cracked pavement, clutching a tiny bundle in her arms. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, her face streaked with tears and dirt. She was holding on to her baby with all the strength her frail body could muster, as two social workers hovered nearby, trying to reason with her. "Ma'am, your baby isn't safe out here," one of them said gently. "We have to take the child into protective care." "No," the woman screamed, shaking her head violently. "I'll do anything, please, I beg you, don't take my baby from me. She's all I have." Her cries sliced through Ethan's heart like a blade. People on the opposite sidewalk glanced over but quickly turned away, not wanting to get involved. Cars kept moving, the world indifferent to her suffering. But Ethan couldn't move. His chest tightened as he watched the young mother clutch her baby, shielding the child from the hands that wanted to separate them. Something about her desperation struck him with a force he hadn't felt in years. He should have walked away. Men like him didn't interfere with street tragedies. But he didn't. He couldn't. The baby let out a soft, broken wail, muffled against the woman's chest. The sound cracked open something inside Ethan, and for a moment, the noise of the city disappeared. All he could hear was the haunting echo of another night years ago, when his own baby daughter had cried like that, right after he lost his wife. His throat tightened. His hands curled into fists. The logical part of him told him to keep walking, to mind his own business. But his feet had already betrayed him, carrying him closer to the scene. The woman looked up then, her tear-filled eyes locking with his. They were eyes that spoke of hunger, exhaustion, and love so fierce it refused to let go. In that instant, Ethan knew this wasn't just another passing moment on a dark street. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. Ethan froze where he stood, just a few feet away from the young mother. The world seemed to narrow until all he could see was her trembling body and the fragile bundle in her arms. Her voice cracked as she repeated her plea, "Please don't take her, she's my baby, she's all I have." Those words didn't just reach his ears, they ripped through him, dragging him back to a night he wished he could forget. It had been years ago, but the memory was sharp, unrelenting. His wife, Lily, had just passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with a newborn. He could still remember standing in that sterile hospital corridor, holding his daughter in his arms, as the doctors tried to explain why his wife wasn't coming back. His knees had gone weak. He had nearly dropped his child, not from lack of care, but from the overwhelming fear that he couldn't do it, he couldn't raise her alone. And then, as if fate wanted to punish him further, he'd had to fight with the hospital staff and social workers who gently suggested that maybe, just maybe, it would be easier if someone else stepped in. They didn't say it outright, but the implication was clear, a grieving man drowning in work wasn't fit to be a father. He had clutched his daughter tighter that night, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "No one is taking you away from me. I don't care what I have to do, I'll protect you, always." Now, standing under that flickering street lamp years later, he heard almost the exact same cry from this homeless woman, a desperate parent, fighting to hold on to the only thing that gave her life meaning. His heart pounded against his ribs. He could see his younger self reflected in her eyes, the same terror of losing a child, the same helplessness of knowing the world was stacked against you. Ethan's jaw clenched as anger rose in him. Not at the social workers, who were only doing their job, but at the cruel unfairness of it all. Why did the world always seem so quick to separate the weak from what they loved most? Why did society prefer to judge instead of help? He realized he was breathing heavily, his hands trembling slightly as he watched the woman clutch her baby, rocking back and forth as though her embrace alone could keep the child safe. His instincts as a businessman told him to calculate, to weigh risks before making a move. But his instincts as a father, they screamed at him to step in. To do something. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the ruthless CEO, the man known for walking away from anything that didn't serve him, felt powerless in front of a choice. He could turn his back and let the scene unfold like every other passerby had, or he could break every rule he'd built for himself and intervene. His chest ached as he looked at the baby, so tiny, so vulnerable. In that moment, he saw not just the child of a stranger, but the mirror of his own daughter when she was that small, bundled in his trembling arms, depending on him to fight for her. And suddenly, the decision didn't feel like a decision at all. Ethan straightened his shoulders, his eyes hardening with resolve. He couldn't walk away. Not this time. The night air hung heavy with tension. The two social workers shifted uncomfortably, their voices calm but firm as they tried once more to reason with the young mother. "Ma'am," one said softly, crouching to her level, "we know you love your child. But this isn't safe. She needs a bed, food, medical care. Please, let us take her somewhere she can be looked after." The woman shook her head violently, clutching the baby tighter against her chest. Her arms trembled from exhaustion, but her grip was unyielding. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "She's all I have. If you take her, you'll be killing me too." The baby let out a small whimper, as if echoing her mother's fear. The sound pierced Ethan's chest like a blade. His blood boiled. He had stood back long enough. "Stop," Ethan's voice cut through the night, deep and commanding. The social workers turned, startled. The homeless woman flinched, pulling her baby closer as her tear-stained eyes flickered up at him. For a moment, no one moved. Ethan's tall figure, dressed in a tailored suit, seemed almost out of place on that dimly lit sidewalk. But the authority in his presence was undeniable. Who are you?" one of the workers asked cautiously. Ethan took a deliberate step forward, his expression sharp but calm. "Someone who isn't going to stand by while you rip a child from her mother's arms." The woman's breath hitched, her lips parting in shock. She hadn't expected anyone to defend her. Everyone else had walked by, pretending not to hear. But this stranger, this man who looked like he belonged to another world entirely, was standing between her and the nightmare she feared most. "Sir," the other social worker said carefully, "with all due respect, this is not your concern. We have procedures to follow. The child is at risk." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Do you see a child at risk?" He gestured toward the trembling woman. "What I see is a mother who hasn't given up on her baby. She's fighting for her child the only way she knows how." His voice grew colder. "If you think I'll let you traumatize that baby by tearing her away tonight, you're mistaken." The workers exchanged nervous glances. They weren't used to being challenged like this, especially not by someone who clearly carried power. "Sir, with all due respect, unless you have legal custody." "I don't need custody," Ethan interrupted sharply, stepping closer. "I have influence. And believe me, I'll use every ounce of it if I have to. You know who I am." They blinked, suddenly recognizing his name as he introduced himself, Ethan Cole. The billionaire CEO. The man whose signature could sway entire boards, whose donations funded half the city's programs, including, ironically, the very department these workers reported to. Their faces paled. Ethan lowered his voice, his tone laced with steel. "You will not take that child tonight. I'll see to it personally that both mother and baby get the care they need. If you want to argue, take it up with my lawyers. But I promise you, you won't win." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The workers shifted uncomfortably, then finally sighed, stepping back. "Fine," one said reluctantly. "But this is temporary. The baby still needs proper care." "She'll have it," Ethan said firmly. "From tonight forward." Relief washed over the mother's face, her tears spilling faster as she looked up at him. Her lips trembled, but the words barely escaped in a whisper. Why would you help me?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His throat tightened as he looked at her and her baby, so fragile, so close to losing each other. At last, he said quietly, almost to himself, "Because I know what it feels like to almost lose a child. And I won't let it happen again. Not to anyone." The woman sobbed harder, burying her face in her baby's blanket, her shoulders shaking. For the first time that night, the fight in her body softened, not from defeat, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing she wasn't alone anymore. Ethan stood tall beside her, his presence now a shield. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. The car ride back to Ethan's penthouse was silent, but thick with unspoken emotions. The mother sat in the back seat, still clutching her baby tightly, as if afraid that even now someone might reach through the tinted windows and take her child away. Her hair fell in messy strands over her face, her lips trembled, and her eyes darted around nervously, as though she couldn't believe this was real. Ethan sat across from her, his sharp features softened by the sight of the little bundle nestled in her arms. The baby had fallen asleep, its tiny chest rising and falling in the safety of its mother's embrace. Ethan tried not to stare, but every so often his gaze returned to them. Something about their presence made his chest ache in a way that wasn't unpleasant. It was familiar, grounding, and painfully human. When the car pulled up to his building, the mother hesitated. The glass doors shimmered, and the lobby glowed with chandeliers and polished marble floors. She looked down at her torn sweater and worn shoes, shame flooding her expression. I can't go in there," she whispered, shaking her head. "You can," Ethan said firmly, stepping out and offering his hand. "And you will. Your baby deserves warmth tonight. Food. Safety. That's all that matters." Her lips quivered, and for a moment, she looked like she might refuse. But then her baby stirred, letting out a soft whimper, and that was enough to make her nod, clutching the child tighter as she followed him inside. The staff in the lobby straightened immediately at the sight of their boss. Their eyes flickered with confusion as they noticed the disheveled woman at his side, but one look at Ethan's expression kept them silent. He wasn't in the mood for questions. When the elevator doors opened to his private penthouse, the woman froze again. The space looked like a world out of a dream, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering skyline, soft leather couches, polished hardwood floors, shelves lined with books and framed photographs. She stepped inside hesitantly, her worn sneakers squeaking against the spotless floor. "This can't be real," she whispered under her breath. Ethan ignored the remark and motioned toward the couch. "Sit. Rest." She obeyed reluctantly, sinking into the plush sofa as if it might swallow her whole. She kept her arms around her baby, rocking gently, her eyes darting around as if she expected someone to suddenly tell her she didn't belong. It was then that a small voice broke the tension. "Daddy?" Ethan turned toward the staircase. His daughter, Emily, no more than 7 years old, stood at the top, rubbing her eyes sleepily. She wore pink pajamas and clutched a stuffed bear in her arms. "Emily," Ethan said softly, his expression softening. "Did I wake you?" The little girl shook her head and then tilted it curiously as she noticed the strangers in the living room. Her gaze fell on the baby first, and her face lit up with innocent wonder. "Is that a baby?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. The mother stiffened, instinctively pulling her child closer, but Emily's eyes sparkled with nothing but pure curiosity. She hurried down the stairs and stood near the couch, careful not to get too close. "She's so tiny," Emily whispered, smiling. "Can I see her?" The homeless woman hesitated, her protective instincts warring with the gentle warmth radiating from the little girl. For the first time that night, someone wasn't looking at her with pity or judgment, they were looking at her baby with awe. Slowly, cautiously, she lowered the blanket just enough for Emily to peek inside. Emily gasped softly. "She's beautiful." The mother's throat tightened, and tears welled in her eyes again, but this time, they weren't from fear. They were from the simple, pure kindness of a child who saw her baby for what she was, not what she represented. Ethan watched the exchange quietly, something unexplainable stirring in him. His daughter, who had grown up with every luxury, was showing the very kindness that money couldn't buy. And the homeless woman, who had been treated like nothing all night, was finally being seen, not as a problem, but as a mother. He cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Emily, it's late. Back to bed." "But, Daddy." "No arguments," Ethan said gently. "We'll talk in the morning." Emily pouted but obeyed, giving the baby one last smile before shuffling back upstairs. The mother looked down at her sleeping child again, whispering so softly Ethan almost didn't hear, thank you for letting me keep her tonight." Ethan's gaze lingered on her. He could see the weight of her exhaustion, the rawness of her fear, and beneath it all, the unshakable strength of a mother's love. He nodded once, his voice low but firm. "You don't need to thank me. Just promise me one thing." She looked up, wary. "Promise me you won't give up. On her, or on yourself." Her lips trembled as she nodded, clutching her baby tighter. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something shift in his heart, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the day he swore never to let anyone too close again. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing the penthouse in golden hues. The city below was already alive with the sounds of traffic and hurried footsteps, but here, inside Ethan Cole's home, there was a rare kind of stillness. Sophia stirred on the couch, blinking against the sunlight. Her baby, Hope, lay nestled against her chest, breathing softly in a peaceful rhythm that seemed almost miraculous after so many nights of shivering on the streets. Sophia held her tighter, as if reassuring herself that this wasn't just a dream. She looked around, her eyes tracing the elegant furniture, the polished wood floors, the framed photos of Ethan with his daughter. Every detail reminded her how far from this world she truly belonged. And yet, here she was, sitting in the heart of it. "Good morning." The voice made her jump. She turned to see Ethan standing near the kitchen, a mug of coffee in his hand, dressed casually now in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His presence filled the space effortlessly, yet there was something gentler in his expression this morning. Sophia lowered her gaze quickly. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I should go before." "You're not going anywhere," Ethan interrupted firmly. He set the mug down and approached. "Not yet. Not while you're running on scraps of food and fear. You and your daughter need rest. Safety. That's not negotiable." Sophia's lips parted, but no words came. No one had spoken to her like that in years, not with authority meant to protect, not to harm. Just then, Emily padded down the stairs in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed bear. Her face lit up the moment she spotted Sophia's baby. "Good morning. Is she awake yet?" Sophia stiffened instinctively, holding Hope a little closer, but Emily's eager smile was disarming. There was no judgment in her young eyes, only fascination. Slowly, Sophia tilted the blanket back to reveal her baby's face. Emily gasped in delight. "She's so cute. Daddy, can we keep them?" Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Emily, they're not pets. But they can stay, right?" Emily pressed, turning her big eyes on her father. Sophia's heart lurched at the question. Stay. The word felt impossible. She didn't belong in this glittering home. And yet, a small part of her ached for it. For once, she wanted to give hope more than cold nights and hungry days. Ethan crouched down in front of her, his gaze steady. "Sophia," he said quietly, "you don't owe me anything. I didn't help you last night out of pity. I did it because I know what it feels like to almost lose your child. And I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen to anyone else if I could help it." Sophia's eyes blurred with tears. She looked down at her baby, then back at him. "I don't know how to live in your world," she whispered. "But I'll do anything if it means she gets a chance." Ethan's voice softened. "Then let me help. You don't have to do this alone anymore." For the first time in so long, Sophia felt the crushing weight on her shoulders ease. Emily leaned closer, whispering, "See? We're like a family now." Sophia let out a shaky breath, pressing a kiss to her baby's forehead. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a future built not on fear, but on hope.